Good morning, Green Spring, on this Friday morning. I'm your host, Avan Price, and we are talking about one of my favorite activities to do, which is eating. And we're not just talking about healthy eating. We're talking about what are the thought processes that go, did I say that right? Thought processes that go behind eating. So I brought our registered dietitian, Mary Smith, on campus to talk about the psychology behind eating.
Yes,
How are you today?
I'm doing well, thank you. I'm excited to be back.
I know you are excited about this topic because I can just see it in your face and just everything we talked
the
about.
email exchange, yeah.
It is, I can see that you're excited to talk about this. So let's just jump right into it. So let's just first off a basis of what is healthy eating.
So the first thing I want to say is I know that we titled this discussion, this program, Psychology of Eating. So I'm just going to put a disclaimer out there that I'm not a psychologist. This is just a discussion, kind of just more of, just to provoke some thought in residents. I'm going to keep an eye on in your life or maybe a loved one's life. But I'm not a psychologist. This should not be treated as, you shouldn't listen to this and take this as a treatment. You know, if you want to meet, we can. But this specific episode or discussion is not a treatment for somebody. But I loved how you opened up and you said one of your favorite activities is eating.
Yes.
Because just that phrasing alone is like, eating is an activity, but like, so the psychology behind it has eating become more than just nourishment.
Yeah.
And if anyone disagrees with that, I mean, I'd be pretty surprised, but eating has become more than just nourishment. It has become an activity. So.
I mean, eating is just how you bond with people. This is how you bond with your family. You eat around the table. This is how you bond with friends. Oh, let's go out and have that cheeseburger. Let's go get some Chick-fil-A or, you know, something like that. So eating is an activity. It
is. Every holiday, you know, there's always like a special meal. You know, cultures have different traditions. Like your faith have different traditions of what you eat when. Like it's eating is something that you are never going to escape. You know, and if you can, there's an issue. You know, there's birthday parties, funerals, like, and comforting, like there's just so much. And there's, you know, we eat 3 times a day, so, you know, sometimes we'll snack. So there are so many habits and there's so many things that will affect our approach to eating. You know, things that have happened to us, things that we've experienced during a mealtime, things like that can be really leave an imprint or a lasting effect on us.
Okay.
You know, so is there something that like maybe now you can't eat anymore because of a bad experience or?
Well, it's not food specifically, but when I was younger, all 4 of us, there was 4 kids in the house, and so my parents would not allow us to have a full glass of juice because they wanted to, you know, get their bang for their buck. So it was, you can only have up to maybe a half of a glass of juice, any kind of juice. And if you got anything more than that, you were in trouble that you couldn't have it for a while. Like that was just a big thing. And now my adulthood, I remember one time I went to a friend's house and the mother served me a full glass of juice and I was just like, oh no, I'm not allowed to have that.
I can't do that, yeah.
Me in my older age, I actually thought my mom was gonna come from around the corner and, you know, yell at me. So to this day, even when I buy my own juice, I still only fill it up to maximum halfway. So psychologically, I cannot pour my own self a full glass of orange juice or apple juice or anything like that.
Yeah, so it's like that habit in your life has had a lasting impact on you and now changes the way you would approach a mealtime, going out with friends, and what you would even buy. Like, would you consider buying something too much? Like, you want to buy the right portion size? So it's interesting that, you know, that, and that's a huge thing we actually see in this population here is because we have a lot of the depression mindset of when they were growing up. So, you know, they have a lot of residents that are like, I need to have small portions on my plate because I cannot waste this food, which is actually a good mindset to have because we don't want to be wasteful. But again, it's just interesting to see the lasting effects that food have in our life. For me specifically, I'll just give one because I think it's funny. The first time I ate pistachios, I thought that they were absolutely amazing. They're so good. I ate a lot of pistachios that I got so sick. And now, like, I can't even smell pistachios because
it makes you sick?
It brings back that memory of me being sick, and I hate throwing up more than anything in the world. So I will do everything to avoid it. So just being seeing pistachios on a table, I'm like, no,
well,
can't
I'm the same way with potato salad.
Yeah.
Because one Thanksgiving, all of us threw up eating potato salad.
This is taking a dark turn. We'll go back to what is healthy eating. So normally when I come on the show, I talk about a specific diet, like, the low sodium diet. We'll talk about, some feature menus that we're having coming up. But I actually wanted to introduce something that's kind of up and coming in our nation, in the world, and nutrition at large. And it's a movement called Health at Every Size, HAES for short. I think I have a slide for that as well. So it's Health at Every Size. And basically what scientists, dietitians, researchers are realizing is that when we base our nutrition and our health solely based on our weight, there are actually negative consequences. So a BMI of 19 is technically considered healthy, but there are multiple times where, a BMI of 19 actually isn't healthy. So for example, if you have an eating disorder, a BMI of 19 is not healthy. Or if you are normally at a BMI of 24, all of a sudden being at 19 isn't healthy. So we're kind of, trying to get this idea out into the world that we shouldn't just look at our weight and be like, I'm healthy, yes or no, by my appearance. So the Health at Every Size movement is trying to be like a little bit more inclusive and be like, what else should we be looking at to be considered healthy nutritionally? So when you say, what's a healthy diet? So my approach is the Health at Every Size approach, which I'm going to say, okay, can you maintain your weight? And what I mean by that is, are you having drastic fluctuations in your weight monthly or weekly? You want a weight that's considered healthy for you to something that you can maintain without having major drops and major increases. I think lab work is extremely important to figure out how you're doing nutritionally, like your electrolytes, your iron levels, your albumin levels, which is just a marker that we use to see how much protein you're getting, your glucose, your A1C, your blood is just a great way, it just gives us an insight to what's going on literally inside your body. Your sleep routine, like how are you sleeping, your bathroom routine, are you regular, are you hydrated, skin. So it's like taking this, zooming out from just weight. So we have this idea that's weight alone, but then let's zoom out to the bigger picture to see you as a whole person and how you're functioning at large. So that's kind of the approach that we want to start having, the populations to start having, because what has happened now through our current generations and just these past couple years is that eating hasn't become just for nourishment. It's become an activity. It's become a fun activity. It's become, I'm coping with something. I'm lonely, I'm angry, I'm happy, I'm stressed. So that brings us to the phrase unconscious eating, or also known as emotional eating. So literally the reason we eat, the number one reason, is just survival. So are we still good? The lights are flickering. Okay, so the reason we eat literally is for survival. So we eat to fuel our body function and for growth and maintenance of our body. So it's, if you're not going to eat, you're not going to live. But, we've seen this rise in unconscious eating. What do I mean by that? So what I mean is that you are unknown, it's unknown what you're eating or why you're eating. You don't feel your hunger pains anymore. You're just eating, and sometimes you don't even realize that you're eating anymore. So it's that lack of presence, and it's...
Now, is that a good thing or a bad thing for us to have unconscious eating? Should I be aware every second of what's going in my mouth, how much is, how much I'm eating, how much I'm partaking in? Is that how I should be eating consciously, or is it okay to have some unconscious eating involved?
That's a great question. I'm really happy that you asked that. I think everything is a balance, because I did put on the slide that there are some instances where emotional eating is okay. Because you think about, I'm going to a birthday party, I'm not starving, but I'm gonna join my friend celebrating her life, and I'm gonna have a piece of cake. There's things reasons we eat besides we're genuinely hungry. Again, you can think about, faith services. Sometimes you eat, making a weight for a sport. Sometimes, Michael Phelps, he said he wasn't hungry, but he had to eat 8,000 calories a day to keep his weight up when he was in his prime exercising routine. So there are always going to be those, outliers. But when I say unconscious eating and emotional eating, I mean the habitual routine of you have no idea that you just went through a bag of chips. You weren't present at all during your meal to the point where you're not enjoying it. So you have overeaten and you're stuffed.
Now, is that a real thing? Because I've heard of people saying oh, I don't know how I just ate this whole cake. Does that,
Yes.
Sometimes I'm just what do you mean? It went in your mouth and you put that in your mouth. So that can actually be a thing of...
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
And I mean, it's great that, I mean, good for you that you've never like experienced that. That's good. But, you know, it's there with the rise in media, the rise in other activities and distractions and noise constantly in our life, we're finding that, you know, people are eating while watching TV, eating while driving, eating while working, and they don't realize, like, you know, they think, oh, I'm just watching TV and I have this, you know, bag of popcorn, which is not bad. I'm not trying to say that's wrong. But then they realize, like, oh, I've gone through this whole entire thing of popcorn, and you weren't even enjoying it because you were watching TV. So like your senses are otherwise involved in another activity that you don't realize, oh, I reached my full point about halfway through that large popcorn at the movie theater, you know? So that distraction has really created an issue in our psychology of eating, meaning like we aren't present anymore.
Okay.
So yeah, there's that.
Now I gotta ask, because we talked about it when we were preparing for this, emotional eating is different than me craving. Like right now, I am craving Chick-fil-A fries dipped in the milkshake with a large lemonade on the side.
Yeah.
So can you kind of explain, you know, when someone says I have a craving for something specifically, where does that coming from? Is that part of emotional eating?
That's a great question. So when I'm using the phrase emotional eating, I kind of mean that there's an absence in your body. Like you're feeling, you physically aren't feeling an emotion, but you're eating because you aren't feeling that emotion. Does that make sense?
Okay.
So you could be feeling lonely or bored. Okay, I just walked home. I'm home from work. I'm really bored. What am I going to do until I go out to dinner? Like, oh, I'm just going to mindlessly walk to my pantry and eat everything. That would be an example of mindless, you know, unconscious eating. But having a craving actually is a sign that your body is hungry or it needs something that's in one of those foods.
Okay.
So a very common craving, especially for women to have, is like meat craving, like red meat, burgers, steaks. And when men have that too, like it means your body needs that iron, it needs that protein. There's something in that your body needs. Now, there could be a psychological effect of like, you know, I'm having a really bad day. When I was, you know, every time I had a bad day at school growing up, my dad would take me to go get ice cream, and all of a sudden I'm really craving ice cream. Like that is legitimate. Like basically your brain forms neural pathways. And like, so basically what I mean by that, if you're in a jungle, imagine you're in a jungle and you have like a machete, right? And you're going through like something in your life, like depression, and so the only way to get through that, you know, you're chopping it down, you're eating while you do it, so you're creating this is the way I'm going to do it, like this is how I'm creating this pathway, I'm going to keep walking it, and that gets stronger and stronger through routine and through habit. So if you're sad and you know, you eat ice cream every time you're sad, like that's a built up habit in your mind. And then, so when you're sad, you're going to start craving that sometimes because that is the neural pathway that you have formed in your mind.
That's interesting that you say that, because for a while, and I had to kick off this habit, when I first started working full time, all my friends, we would always, you know, celebrate Friday. We would always get cheese fries, and it was just kind of a habit.
Yeah.
So every time it became Friday, what was I craving? Cheese fries.
Yeah.
So that's interesting that you say that memories from the past and the different emotions attached to it.
And routine is like affects you so much. Like I have a sparkling water every day after lunch because I just need to stay hydrated through the day. And when I don't have it, I'm like craving carbonation in my throat because I love the tingle of it. And so, but it's like, oh my goodness, I didn't realize how much I enjoyed that, how much my body was programmed or used to having it. That's like an emotional attachment to it, but it's not bad though, you know. But that's an example of how routine and that neural pathway can be, you know, formed.
Now, if I'm a person who has a problem with emotional eating, what can I do?
Yeah, great question.
What's the next thing of what to do with that? So
I feel like I just said a lot of like examples of why, like good instances of emotional eating. Like it's not bad for us to crave like French fries with our friends on Friday. When we're going to get into an issue of emotional eating, like could be I'm, you know, sitting at home, I'm bored, and I'm just going to eat everything in my pantry. I'm not full anymore. So basically, when you get to the point where you are unable to recognize you're hungry or you're full, that's when you're having an issue. Or if you find yourself unable to stop, or you know, you feel stressed and like the only thing you want is food, and you know nothing else is satisfying. And like it's again that routine habit that's happening. So what to do? If you could go back to that slide. So Again, this is not a replacement for therapy. Like, that your treatment, like that would be a great thing to look into if it's a severe issue or a problem that you feel like you have. But one way to just kind of check in on yourself is do a food diary.
Okay.
A food diary along with just tracking your intake, but also track your hunger and your fullness and then your emotion during it.
Okay.
So, say, okay, I woke up at 6 a.m. I'm going to eat breakfast. Like, I feel tired, but I'm hungry. So okay, and then then rank how hungry you are. So on the next slide, I actually have a hunger scale.
All right, let's look at that.
Yeah, the hunger and fullness scale. So if you look at that hunger and fullness scale, so 1 is like you are so hungry that you are going to pass out, you're dizzy, your blood sugars are dropping, like you need food now. And then 10 being like, I am so full, I'm going to be sick. So you never want to be on either of those extremes. So when you're recording and trying to like check in on yourself with what you're doing, you want to be like, when you eat, you want to be at about a 2 or a 3, meaning like I feel the hunger, I'm desiring food, but I'm not to the point where I'm going to pass out because I haven't eaten, and then so you want to write down where you are on the scale right before you eat. So like, okay, I'm pretty hungry, and then say, okay, write down what you're going to eat, and then after you eat it, or check in with yourself while you're eating it as well, figure out where you land on the fullness, hunger side of the scale. So, I'm slightly full, but I still feel some of that hunger pain. Okay, you can keep eating, or if you're like, wow, I didn't even realize I'm already at a 9, I'm so stuffed I can barely move. Like that's many of us after Thanksgiving, but but that scale can be really handy to just check in with yourself before, during, and after a meal.
Now, this might sound weird. Can you tell us what true hunger is? Because sometimes we might think we're hungry and we're really not. You're just bored, or you just really just want to stuff your mouth.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's a good question. So obviously when you start feeling like the hunger pangs in your stomach, like sometimes you can hear like the stomach growling.
All that stuff.
That's an indicator that you're hungry, of course. Some people actually get headaches when they're hungry. Like, so for me personally, like my stomach doesn't growl as much, but I'll start getting a headache.
Okay.
You'll start feeling a little bit shaky sometimes. That's you don't want to get to the point where you're shaky, but you can just start feeling yourself like a zap of energy. But again, I think the biggest thing is just going to be that hunger pang in your stomach. Now, what we're finding nowadays, though, is certain people are getting so good at ignoring that that you can't track your hunger anymore, or it's just never present because we're eating so much that our body never gets to the point where we're feeling that hunger anymore. So if you can't feel that, you may be at one of those extremes, like you're eating so much that you're not hungry, or you've gotten so good at ignoring it because you don't want to eat, maybe for, you're trying to lose weight, and I don't recommend doing it that way. Also, again, time out real quick, disclaimer. If you have diabetes, if you have medication, like I'm not saying don't eat because you're not feeling hungry. Always go with your plan. This, again, is not a treatment or not a recommendation for everyone. This is just a discussion that we're having. Like if you're eating, stick with your medication. If you're diabetic, always do that first. But we're talking about specifically feeling it in your body.
And pay attention to those disclaimers that she has said.
Yeah, please. I don't want to get in trouble here.
I have a question with this. Let's say I'm a person, I've heard this before, and I've seen in shows when they're trying to lose weight. Some people might just say, and you're saying that today's world, people are ignoring their hunger signs. Let's just say I'm a person and I'm like 400 pounds. Is it proper for me to skip meals and ignore? Because they can say, well, I might feel hungry, but I'm just going to skip my meal because I have stuff on reserve. No. You've probably heard that kind of something around that expression. Yeah,
stuff on reserve.
Yeah. Is that a good thing to do? Just to say, ignore my hunger because I got a little extra.
No.
Packing in.
No, that's not okay. Because if you don't eat, your body will at some point you will kind of shut down. Like you can faint, you can get dizzy, you can get angry, like you'll not be yourself, kind of thing. And just because you may have a little extra padding, that doesn't count as a meal. Okay. Like, if you're really hungry at lunchtime, like it's not going to count as a meal being like, well, I got a few extra pounds like on my stomach. Like that's going to count. That won't count. But like over time that your body would feed off of that, like it would break it down, but that would be kind of an emergency storage thing. Yeah. And you don't want to get into that. If somebody was 400 pounds or wanted to lose weight in a healthy way, you would change what you're eating and maybe like, how much you're eating, but like mainly what you're eating. You want to make sure you're like less processed food, more healthy food. So.
Well, now I can. Now I know better.
Yeah.
Because I remember when I was heavy set, when I would always say, "Oh, I'll skip lunch or I'll skip this," because I have some extra package, padding to keep me over until.
No, so actually, I'm glad that you started saying that, because it triggered another thought for me, which is actually, I think that we have a slide on the diet cycle, which would be great to go to. Yeah, there we go. So you unintentionally did this by skipping a meal. So the diet cycle is basically, okay, I'm going to start a diet because, I don't like how I feel. I don't like what I look like. For some people it can be, oh, I just saw pictures of this person. She looked so good in that dress, or like he looked really good in that suit, or something like that. So this feeling of inadequate, like you're motivated by self-hate and sometimes despair to start a diet. So then you go on restriction, which for you, in the example, not that you're saying that, but for this example, like you skipped a meal. And that created that deprivation of food, like you have an increase in exercise, decrease in amount of food you're taking in, and it can become obsessive. And what's actually going to happen to your body is that it's going to be like, oh my gosh, we're going into starvation mode. Like, we're not going to get food. My mind is going to go, like red lights and be like, I need food right now. And we're going to go into the, I need to eat, the breaking point. So then that creates like almost a binge afterward. And your body's actually going to hold on to those calories more than they would burn them correctly, because they're like, you're training your body to not know when you're going to get food again.
So your body actually works against you when you operate in this kind of manner.
Yeah, if you do anything too intense, too soon, too quickly, and then you hit that breaking point, the cravings are going to increase drastically. The deprivation, you're going to start feeling it. You're not going to be emotionally happy or physically happy, and it's going to create this giving in experience, this binge, whatever, that this isn't possible, there's no hope. I'm going to eat everything now because I skipped this meal and I deserve it, or I'm tired of dieting, I'm just going to do this. And actually, going through this cycle, you're more likely to gain weight than lose weight doing fad diets, or doing diets in this sense that we're talking about. A much healthier approach would be kind of sitting down and being like, am I present during meals? And then realizing like, wow, I did not even desire dessert, but I just ate it because I'm used to eating it, and then be like, I just ate that because everyone else was. I didn't actually enjoy that. So being present and working on how to bring focus back, and then, exercise and things like that, and then changing what you're eating gradually is much more effective lifestyle. Okay. Can I give you my favorite tip on trying to be present during meal times?
All right, tell me.
It's actually really hard to do.
Okay.
But I am confident that the residents and you may even enjoy this. It's very hard for me to do.
Okay.
So if it's hard for me, I feel like it's probably hard for everybody, just because I'm a dietitian. But try to list 3 to 5 adjectives or way to describe what you're eating while you're eating it.
Wait,
so if you were eating like a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, like while you're eating it, thinking it in your mind, how does this taste?
Okay.
And then if for some people, it's best for them to write it down. If they're really trying to work on being present and working on, am I eating because I'm bored, or I'm eating because I'm hungry? Because what's going to happen is the more you pay attention to your food, it brings you back to your food. If you're trying to describe it like, oh, this pulled pork sandwich is really like tangy, or it's really nice.
Okay. I'm looking at you and I'm just like, man,
so
I am
hungry.
not. I don't know. That's so hard. That's going to be.
It's hard.
Of eating and trying to think of adjectives, because the only one I'm just going to think of is delicious, and let's just move on.
That's good. But the thing is, there might become a point during that meal that it's no longer delicious, and it's because you've reached your filling point. Like, oh, I no longer taste like the cheesiness of this mac and cheese. Oh, because I'm not enjoying it anymore. That could be a sign that I'm, full.
Okay.
And I like what you said, like, oh, it's going to be hard to eat and think at the same time. Like, well, you can, take a couple bites, set it down, and then if you're with a friend and you're working on it together, be like, how do you like this? Like, what would you describe this as? Oh, it's really creamy, or like it's really warm. And then it creates presence at the mealtime. And then it just allows you to be like, wow, I'm not enjoying this anymore. Like, I'm going to stop eating it, but I've still enjoyed it.
So the next Sunday dinner with my family, I'm going to say, stop, give me 3 adjectives.
You should do it.
I want to try it and see how my family responds to it.
And then do it throughout the meal and see if they change. Yeah.
All right, I'll see how it goes and let you know. So I know you wanted to talk about this because I know this is an area that you like. since you're talking about intentional eating and all those kind of habits, can you kind of give us information on this intuitive eating?
Yeah, so before I worked here, I actually worked in a private practice where I did intuitive eating treatment for, people in general, but also people who have binge eating disorders or eating disorders. But intuitive eating is basically learning your hunger scale, like learning your hunger, like honoring your hunger cues, respecting your fullness scale, but also like knowing that all foods fit. And one of the first things that they're going to say is like, don't label foods as good or as bad, because you're starting to form a pathway in your head of like, oh, mac and cheese bad because of calories, but like then you're gonna eat it and psychologically you're gonna be like, I'm bad now. And it creates that despair, like, oh my gosh, I'm the worst. Okay, I'm the worst. I'm gonna make up for this. I'm gonna go on a diet cycle and I'm not gonna eat my next meal. And then we just talked about how like actually doing that, you're more likely to gain weight than lose weight. So it's this approach of like this lifelong approach of finding peace and enjoyment with eating. And I've said it on this show before, but I just don't think it can be oversaid, which is if you don't enjoy what you're eating, if you don't balance taste and nutrition, you're not going to be able to keep doing it. Okay. So you need taste because that's what's going to make it lifelong, but you also need nourishment because you need to live lifelong. And so you need those both together to create a good experience.
Taste is very important. I'll say this real quick. I remember when I had to do a weight cut, one of the extreme processes is to have seasonless chicken. And let's just say, even though the nourishment was good, it having no taste ruined it for me. And it was hard for me to get through it. And I was like, I don't know how I'm going to make it this week and a half. So I can't imagine, forcing yourself to eat something as a lifelong thing. So taste is very important. I think that's a good point to bring up.
If you don't enjoy it, you're going to break at some point and then create that binge giving in, experience where then all of a sudden you're like, well, I've suffered basically through so long not enjoying what I'm eating, so I'm just going to go have everything I want. Almost like this feast and famine mindset. Like, I've been in famine, I'm going to go feast now. And you want to create balance. So
now I know we're not going to want to. We're running out of time, and it would require more in-depth conversation. But you've mentioned before the dangers of having bad thoughts about food can have a person have different psychological problems. Can you kind of touch what are the different problems that it can turn into that are out there?
Definitely. That's something that I'm also very passionate about, is if you don't create a positive experience with food, but also a positive experience with yourself, like learning to, love where you are and your appearance and, your gifts and your mindset, things like that, it can lead to eating disorders. And eating disorders doesn't just mean like I'm super thin and I'm not eating. It could actually be binge eating disorder. It could be bulimia. It could be anorexia nervosa. It could just be disordered eating, which is not as intense as an eating disorder, but could lead to that. It could just be self-hate. It could be depression, anxiety. I mean, there's just so much that we feel, and eating is such a huge way that we judge ourselves, and our appearance is such a huge way that we judge ourselves. So, depending on how we feel about eating and ourselves, it can create these huge lasting effects on us that are actually like really negative if we don't handle it correctly. And something that we talked about before we did this segment was if, we garner enough interest from this segment alone and we get some questions or we get good feedback, I can definitely come back and go more in depth on that, because I think that it's never too late to start loving yourself and to start enjoying your life. So I think that would be a great thing to, talk about if that's something that residents are interested in.
Well, I hope they give you a buzz so that we can talk about it, because I love talking about eating, especially because I just do a sport where eating is such a major factor, because you have to make weight, and you need energy, so we're always trying to make sure we eat the right thing. And I know some of my teammates, I wouldn't so much they say they have a disorder, but they get so ADD or so focused, obsessive. That's probably a better word. Obsessive about eating quote unquote the right thing. And my take on things is, I need to eat my fruits and vegetables and protein, but on a random Wednesday, it's okay if I had those Chick-fil-A fries. Or or it's on a Friday, it's okay if I have some Skittles. So that way, like we kind of touched on before, I don't break down and then I'm eating like 4 boxes of French fries.
Or just going mentally crazy, like all I'm thinking about right now is Chick-fil-A French fries. Like you don't want to get to the point where like all you're thinking about and obsessing about is food. Because there's an issue, if you get to that point. So, but.
Well, thanks, Mary, for coming on. I'm sure we can talk about this for hours and hours, but unfortunately, all we have is 30 minutes.